What's going on, everybody? All right, it's Wednesday. Wednesday is Q&A day. I'm excited to tackle these questions, some interesting ones to say the least. As always, remember, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, down below in the comments, simply type out your question and I will add it to the list. I do 5 of these each and every week. But first, I want to back up. I want to just thank everybody who showed up for MidLife Live number 7 on Monday night with my panel of Jake of Wax Pack Wisdom, Dan of Dan's Vintage Baseball PC, and Mike of Junk Wax Hero. Thank you to those 3, but a special thank you to all of you that showed up. I had a lot of fun. If you missed it live, check it out recorded. It is posted on the channel. And I really, I said at the start of the year, each year I try to add a different goal and what's going to be different about this year. And I said, I'm going to do one of these a month. I'm going to stay committed to that. I will be doing 12 live streams during the year 2025, and we are over halfway through with 7 of them down, and I'm already working on who will be on the panel for August, and it's a great group. So I will let you know once we get closer for that. Now, I've got a lot of stuff going on over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling with family. I am planning on still posting videos as consistently as I normally do. I'm also recording an episode on Friday with a couple of good friends, which I'm very excited to share. Hopefully that will post on probably Saturday. I'm hoping. We'll see. That said, enough of me yapping, but more of me yapping, because I just did want to point out a couple of things. I wanted to share something that I shared in the live stream on Monday night. Our good pal Scott of Reindeer Studios, he's gone full-time art, and I have so much respect for him taking that plunge and just going for it. And I've tried really hard to support him. And one of the things that I've tried to do to support him is shout out his channel from time to time, because heck, why not help out a great person? So in case you missed it on Monday night, I just wanted to give you a quick look at his brand new website that he launched that has all of his amazing art. So let's check that out, and then we'll take a look at our first question. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody's best friend, Scott, over at Reindeer Studios. He just launched his new website, reindeerstudios.com. And you can see down here, he's got art, he's got apparel, he's got all sorts of awesome stuff. And we know what a talented guy he is. So if we look up here at the links, we're going to click on shop, and you'll see links to each category of his awesomeness. And I really encourage you to consider it. But over here in apparel, whether you're going to a local card show or you're going to the national, you want to look fitted in your sports card themed gear. And Scott's got all sorts of awesomeness here. He's got the Sports Flicks shirts. He's got Lou Gehrig Says, but if you look down here, he's also got MidLife gear. The home of MidLife gear is over here on Scott's channel. Now, if you buy a MidLife sports card shirt, I will say that things run a little small. I would add one size up from what you usually order. So if you're normally a large, I'd get an XL. I am sporting this shirt as I record this MidLife with the kind of heather gray, I guess. Anyways, Scott is a great guy. Support him over at reindeerstudios.com. Hypothetically, if Fanatics were to buy CGC and add them to their empire for their grading company, how do you think that changes the grading landscape? I heard that they were the only grader on site at Fanatics Fest. Oh yeah, I think this is a fantastic point. If hypothetically Fanatics were to purchase CGC, would they become a viable grading company? Now, first of all, they are a viable grading company. They absolutely are a viable grading company. And I love the fact that they merged with JSA. The fact that they have JSA in the fold is fantastic. The other thing about CGC is they're kind of a leader in some of the other grading items. Like in video games, they're huge. They've graded magazines, which I know PSA is trying to get on board with, but they are definitely viable. It's more the vintage card and even kind of modern sport card area that they haven't really made a breakthrough. So if Fanatics acquired them, 100% that's a game changer. That's 100% a game changer because, see, the thing about SGC, why SGC was able to get a foothold is they were an early adopter. Sometimes it's not important to be the best. It's more important to be first. And when you're one of the first companies, then you almost become somewhat synonymous with the whole concept of whatever the item is. Like Band-Aid is a brand. They're bandages. Q-tip is a brand. They're cotton swabs. Scotch tape is a brand. And so I think that to a certain extent, especially with pre-war, SGC has been in the game since the very beginning and has been viable and found their niche, which was vintage, which is part of the reason I think they've had a hard time breaking in to TCG and to more modern stuff is because they've always been thought of as this vintage company. And that's the thing with CGC. CGC has been known for some of these other things, and they're not really known for doing vintage. So can they grade vintage? Of course. Of course they can grade vintage. But I think a lot of people, not everyone, but a decent chunk of people see a vintage card in a CGC holder and they go, why is it in a CGC holder? Why isn't it in an SGC holder? Why isn't it in a PSA holder? Why would you put that card in a CGC holder? It doesn't mean that it's not a legit card with a legit grade. But what it means is some people kind of are a little hesitant. And if some people are a little hesitant, that reduces the demand of potential buyers, which is part of the reason I think the resale value has sort of lagged. But the other thing about some of these other grading companies, it's like, you know, it was always the big three. It was SGC, PSA, and Beckett. And there have been a lot of companies that have come and gone. They have come and gone, and there's a variety of reasons, but a lot of the reasons is because they didn't have a major financial backer with deep pockets. So if there were any bumps along the road, it was kind of the end. If there were any issues that took place, it was hard for them to overcome that. But if you put Fanatics money behind CGC and there's a bump in the road, that's not going to be a problem. Now, one of the things that I think could become an issue is, I don't know, there's already been some people going, man, Fanatics has too much power. Fanatics has become a monopoly, right? They're a seller, they're a manufacturer, they're a distributor. They do all of the different things, and you start going, is antitrust in the picture? And I think that if they bought a grading company as well, I could see that scrutiny intensifying. That said, usually when there is a monopoly that the government decides to go after, it's over a major industry, it's over a major market that, could potentially harm a lot of the population, like oil or software, like the Microsoft one, or the oil, or the trains, or those are the sorts of things. Because if there is too much power in something that we all need, then that could become an issue. So I don't really think the government will go, wait, what? Fanatics? They just bought a grading company? Okay, it's time to go after them. But it could, I suppose. So I absolutely think that would bring them legitimacy. I absolutely think that it would provide them a very strong financial backing. I think it would be a game changer. Now, right now, depending on who you ask, I kind of think that it's, PSA is the lead dog. I think that SGC, again, if I'm talking sports cards, I think that SGC is right there, and especially with vintage cards. And then with vintage, there's not a ton going on with Beckett, not a ton going on with CGC, but they could absolutely market themselves and become a massive player if Fanatics were to go ahead and make that move. So will they? Who knows? If they did, would it change my mind? Yes. And I think that there are a lot of people who are already going with CGC, especially with PSA acquiring SGC. And those people could end up looking really smart if something like a Fanatics acquisition of CGC were to actually happen. I think that CGC's JSA autograph authentication stuff really helped legitimize them with sports cards, but Fanatics buying them would be, I believe, a complete game changer. This next one says, great video, Greg. Lately, I've been so tired of how monetized the hobby has gotten, which I do in part attribute to grading, that I've been buying cards raw off Greg Morris. Will my feelings change, and may I eventually get some of these cards graded? Perhaps. You do make a good point about our cards getting passed down to people we care about. This leads me to the following thought. With all the discussion around SGC's future, PSA's lack of consistency, and the rise of companies like CGC, maybe it's best to sit on raw cards for a while and wait to grade until there's more clarity in the hobby. Looking forward to your live episode next week. All right. Now, first of all, thank you for the question. And I did genuinely, truly enjoy the time that we had getting to chat at Strongsville. Very much appreciate those conversations. And I hope that you go back to Strongsville this next year as well. And maybe we could hang out a little bit and chat some more. I almost combined this question with the first question, but I do think that they have dramatically different angles to them. And if I tried to combine them, I probably wouldn't do a very good job answering them. That's something that happened last week, is I had two questions which I combined, and then I kind of, in retrospect, probably diluted down my response to each of them. So I decided to keep these separate and go directly with your question. Now, this came up on Saturday night, Jeremy Lee's stream, Sports Cards Live, and his guest was Mike of Junk Wax Hero. So, and they were talking about sort of this whole concept of, being slab gnostic, but also CGC. And if we don't know the future, then how can we know what the best grading company is going to be, or at least what the most respected grading company is going to be? I think the dramatic change in PSA's grading standards over the last 2-3 years in the long term is going to greatly affect how much people respect the grades that PSA puts on their holders. I don't think you could have two cards side by side with the same grade and one be clearly a better looking card and have those grades really hold a lot of value. So I think that the dramatic changes that PSA has had, and whether that's because they're using some sort of AI assist, maybe. Did they change their standards? Maybe. Are they using different technology? Maybe. All I know is it is indisputable that the average card being graded by PSA today is significantly being graded harder than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It just is. Now, it doesn't mean that every card that was graded 20 years ago, the grading doesn't hold up. But on average, I believe that the average grade now is clearly harder than it was 20 years ago. So fast forward another 10 years, when people look at PSA slabs, they're going to go, this must have been graded a long time ago because this doesn't look like a 4. See, for years and years and years, PSA had this distinct advantage that a 4 was a 4 and a 6 was a 6. Now, this one might have been a better centered 6 than this one over here, but the lesser centered 6 probably had better color or sharper corners. But when you take everything into account, people just accepted that every 6 is better than every 5 unless you just hated off-centered cards. There have always been people that like centered cards. And so I believe that in the future, people are going to look back and they're going to look at PSA grades, and instead of going, it's a 6, so it must be better than a 5. And I know people are going, well, what are you talking about, Greg? Everybody, it's always been like that. It's always been where, sometimes people would see a 5 and they thought it was better than a 6. Not really. Not really. It may have been like that for the last 3 or 4 years. If people got back in during the pandemic, you might feel that way because that's when they started grading harder. But there was a time where 7s sold for 7s and 6s sold for 6s. And it was a rare exception that one sold dramatically out of the range. Now there are cards that are in lesser grades that sell for more than cards in higher grades. That didn't used to happen hardly ever. Now, could somebody find a handful of examples? Sure. I'm not even answering the question, but I am. My point is this. I think in 10 years, people are going to look back on PSA Health and I'm going to have thumbs downs. I'm going to have negative comments because there are PSA collectors out there. There are people who have lots of money in PSA slabs, in cards that are graded by PSA, I should say, that are going to go, this guy is trying to make it seem like my PSA graded cards aren't legit. I'm not saying that. But I understand why you'd be defensive about it because you have a lot of money tied up in it. And you can't possibly have anybody have an opinion that could potentially harm your collection. I'm not taking anything away from your cards. I'm sure that people out there who are PSA only collectors have wonderful collections. But that doesn't mean that they all received a grade on the slab that they would receive today if they were cracked and resubmitted. Doesn't change the card. So everybody who freaks out, oh, you can't say that. I can say that because the card doesn't change. So in theory, your opinion of the card shouldn't change. It doesn't change the card. At the end of the day, the evaluation of a card should have nothing to do with the grade or when it was graded. It should have to do with the card itself. And that grade should provide us with some information about the qualities of the card. So what I'm saying is this. We don't know, without any question, and this came up on Saturday night on Sports Cards Live. Joe Perot, Jeremy Lee, Mike Junkwax Hero, they absolutely brought this up. And part of what came up was, well, we don't know who the leader's going to be in 10 years. In 10 years, people might look back and go, I can't believe PSA had such a commanding lead. There are a lot of businesses that used to just be fantastic, and they're not now. They went out of business, you know? When was the last time you were at a Blockbuster Video or a Radio Shack? There's a reason that some things go out of business. Some things don't evolve. Some things don't keep up. Sometimes there's just a change in behavior and opinions about different companies. So not knowing what's going to happen in 10 years is your point. And I think your point is fantastic. But here's my concern for you. I love the premise of the point. Maybe we should wait. If I'm going to sell my cards before I die, and I'm only 40, and I'm hoping to live until I'm 80, maybe I should wait 25, 30 years, and then get the cards slabbed, because if I get the cards slabbed then, I can go with whoever the top company is. Because remember, it wasn't that long ago that Beckett was the clear number one grading company. And now, they're struggling to keep the lights on. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not a bad concept except for one thing. We never know. Every single time you get in a car, you are risking your future. Every time you close your eyes and go to sleep, you don't know what's going to happen. So I don't wait until I get sick to try to make sure I have enough money in my bank account in case I were to pass. What I do is, I got life insurance when I got engaged to my wife. Because as soon as we were married, we were financially and emotionally dependent on each other. And so I wanted to make sure she was taken care of if something happened to me the day after our wedding, a week after our wedding. I don't think I'm going to die in the next week, but I could. So if you wait to see what the top grading company is, and then you go away, and then your loved ones are left with your collection and it's all ungraded, that's what I want to protect you against. So, in my personal opinion, at the very least, get your most expensive stuff graded with a company that you value and that you trust. And then in the future, if the top grading company changes and you want to swap them and cross them over to that company's slabs, I don't think that's a bad idea. But leaving them raw, if there's a significant amount of value in the collection, I just don't want all of you out there to have this collection which you've put time into, energy into, and money into, which is now an asset for your loved ones that could help them after you're gone, end up being a high five deal in the back room at the local card shop as your loved one drives off because they didn't know what they had. So at the very least, I'd say two things, two options. Option number one. Option number one is get them graded by a current trustworthy graded company in case something happens to you. It's like life insurance. I don't want to pay life insurance, but I still at the moment have it. I won't have it forever. I won't need it forever, but I have it now. I would get your cards graded, at least the significantly valuable ones, to protect your loved ones, just like life insurance protects your loved ones. If you refuse to do that on the box with your collection, on your Zion case, on your shoebox, on whatever, put a note and tape it to the box that says, if something happens to me, call this person or reach out to this person. Have it be somebody that you trust. And if you don't have anybody that you trust, give them my information, because I'm not going to let your loved one get taken advantage of. I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of. So you can give them my email address. You can give them my channel name. You can give them my name. Tell them to get in contact with me and I'll help them out. Because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want them to get taken advantage of. Ideally, it would be somebody locally near where you are to help you. But if you don't have anybody, give them my information. I'd be happy to help. Possible question. It's always asked, what are your favorite all-time baseball cards? But based on eye appeal, do you have any least favorite baseball cards that you personally own or won't pull the plug to buy even though they might be Hall of Famers? And why? All right. This question was asked probably 6 months ago. And every question that's asked, I put it on a list and I keep it. And then I kind of go through them and I try to find a different mix and things that are relevant or kind of topics that we're on. And again, I keep talking about Sports Cards Live from the other night, but recently on a Saturday night on Sports Cards Live, they were talking about cards that they didn't like. And I was like, nah, I like to be positive. I don't want to bash something that somebody else likes. And my buddy Matthew at 1956 Topps Guy, he commented several times in the chat that no, like just because you say it's not my thing doesn't mean you're bashing it. What you're doing is you're saying I don't like everything. There comes a point where just being positive about everything all the time is kind of annoying. Sometimes you got to go, nah, it's not my thing. And so it was like a year and a half ago, there was a similar kind of question. And I kind of talked about a couple of things that I wasn't really a big fan of. And some people got a little irritated, and that's okay. But I thought that Matthew's point was fantastic. And it was like, yeah, it is okay to have an opinion. And it doesn't mean that it's right. You're just sharing what you do or don't like. So there are a few things that I'm not that... I actually like a lot of stuff. There are very few sets and years and things that I go, I'm not a fan of that. Most I like. I mean, some people love the 1962 Topps set. I don't love it. I don't dislike it, but it is way down my list of favorites. Now, I know there are some people, it's their absolutely favorite set. It's just not mine. I'm not big on strip cards. Now, I know there are some people who love strip cards. I got good friends who some of their biggest cards are strip cards. That's something that's not really my thing. I'm not into strip cards. I guess what it is I'm not, when it comes to strip cards, because I'm thinking back at kind of pre-war stuff, I like cards that when I look at the card, it looks like the player. And there are a few sets that are kind of cartoony. And there are strip cards that some of them kind of look like the player and some of them look a little cartoony. I like things that I think represent the essence of the person and the player. And so for me, I'm not a big strip card guy. I'm not a big guy where there were some cartoony sort of liberties taken by the manufacturers back pre-war. I've talked. But one of the reasons also I think it's good to talk about this is because opinions change. Like, I would say, a year ago, I would say I had no interest in any modern cards. But my opinion on modern cards has really shifted where I think I totally understand the appeal of modern cards. I haven't really gotten into them. I haven't bought a major modern card, but I do understand why somebody would, where I would say a year ago, I wouldn't have even really been able to understand that. So it is, I think, good to kind of put a marker, like kind of stick your flag in the sand every once in a while. And so you can look back and go, has it moved at all? Is it still in the same place? And so that's kind of where I'm at. But there aren't really any players that I avoid. There aren't a ton of sets other than cards that are kind of look more like cartoons than the person themselves. Like, there are some of those sets where it's like all the players kind of look the same. And I don't remember the exact names. I want to say there was maybe one of the caramel sets, like a Philadelphia caramel or American caramel or something. Someone in the comments will definitely point out which one it is. But there are some sets and you're just like, that doesn't even look like that guy. I used to be sort of not a big fan of oversized stuff. But I'm totally more open-minded to that now. But I guess what I wanted to really point out about this is not specifically things I like and things I don't like. I think the thing that I wanted to address in this particular question is just because something isn't the apple of my eye doesn't mean it can't be the apple of somebody else's. I have no doubt that I probably have walked by people on the street and they go, how did that guy land her, my wife? And I don't know either. But I have a feeling, but for whatever reason, my wife likes me. And so because she likes me, that's great for me. But in the eye of her beholder, in her eye, I check the box, I guess, supposedly. That doesn't mean that anyone else would. It might mean she's the one. And it's the same thing with cards. Like, if I don't like a particular set or I don't want to collect a particular player, it doesn't mean it sucks. When I say I think that PSA's grading standards have gotten tougher, so that could affect in the future how people look at PSA grades, it doesn't mean I'm right. There are TV shows that I love that other people hate. There are TV shows that people love that I hate. There are sports teams that you love that I hate. I think that we get too upset when somebody doesn't like what we like or when somebody likes something that we don't. Like, if I say I don't like strip cards and you love strip cards, that doesn't mean you should hate me. It doesn't mean you should think, oh, well, unsubscribe, this guy's a complete idiot. I might be a complete idiot, but it's not because I don't like strip cards. It just means it's not my thing. We're so opinionated and we're so dogmatic about our opinions. It's okay for us to have a different opinion than another person and it doesn't make us bad. There are a lot of things in this world that people can be interested in and not interested in, but it doesn't make them a bad person. I think we need to be more open-minded to whether other people may have a difference of an opinion, but we can still get along. And it's that way with cards too. I don't care if you like modern or vintage. I don't care if you like cards from the 80s. I don't care if you like football versus baseball. Quite frankly, I think I like most everything. But there are a couple of things I'm not a big fan of. But it doesn't mean that we can't get along. So, my advice is when I say something you don't like, instead of getting angry, just go, difference of opinion. The difference of opinion is one of the greatest things because it creates interesting dialogue. And how boring would things be if we didn't have interesting dialogue? So did I answer your question? I don't know. I'm not a big strip card guy. I'm not a big collector of cards where the drawing doesn't look like the person. But other than that, I like just about everything. This one says, here's a question for you. As technology improves, surely grading will evolve as well. I am envisioning a Tag 12.0 with full card scans that will provide an objective assessment of all important characteristics of card condition. I will speculate that the grading scale will change to reflect the desired characteristics of cards as time progresses. For example, registration and centering may get higher weights than they get today to reflect the evolving focus on eye appeal. If my speculation is correct, cards graded today will likely be re-evaluated based on new standards, like you applying your standards to slab cards today, meaning all 4s, or whatever grade, are not created equal. What do you think about this? If you feel my speculation has merit, would it change in any way your current or future approach to grading? If so, how might you change your approach? Thanks for all your videos. Now, again, there's going to be some overlap between this question and some of the things I was talking about earlier. So definitely a similar theme through several of these questions today. And I don't know, I don't use notes. I don't write anything down ahead of time. To be honest with you, I pick questions, I record them, I kind of forget what I picked. Then I read them and I go, oh yeah, that's the question. And then bang, I record. So this is as close to stream of consciousness as I can come up with. So, other people do videos in different ways, and other people prepare things with summaries of their thoughts, or they refer to their notes, and good for them. But to me, in an attempt, because again, I've said this before, if there's anything I want to be, it's authentic. I don't want people to go, that guy, he's not authentic. And to me, the best way to be authentic is to be just kind of a spur of the moment person. It's one of the reasons I like lives. One of the reasons I like lives is because you have to just react. You can't look anything up. You can't refer to anything. You just give your thoughts. And I like sharing thoughts and hearing other people's thoughts. I've said for a couple of years that, similar to what I said earlier, that as the grading standards feels to me that it has gotten more strict, that it has actually taken power from the grading companies and given it to the collector. No longer, like I said a minute ago, is a 6 clearly better than a 5. Because there was a time, again, I know some of it go, no, there's always been a time. there was a time where it was borderline unheard of for a 6 to sell more for more than a 7. But now it happens fairly frequently. What I think is the next move in the evolution of grading is not that AI is going to do everything. It's not that everything, some new grading company is going to come and take over and everything is going to get cracked and regraded. I think that there will be some tools that evaluate cards that have already been encapsulated. I think there will be like additional stickers, for example, where there will be maybe an app or a software program that will give us the exact centering of a card. So now attached to this PSA, to this particular PSA card, when I look up the serial number or I scan it or whatever, you can actually maybe have a separate database that gives you 48.2 to 51.8 centering, like side to side. There will be additional features on top of the grade. I don't think the grades are going to be wiped clean. I don't think everyone's going to crack them out and go with this new grading company. I think there's going to be additional features, additional things that give us more insight into the card that has already been graded. And so as centering maybe becomes the thing, you can go, well, this one's centered better than this one because when it was scanned by such and such company, it said it was this grading. And then in their database, so, you look up the PSA serial number, and in this centering company's database, it tells you the exact centering of the card. So people will reference things like that. And I think these enhancements of maybe like the color saturation, like a card will be scanned by a particular app and it will tell the color saturation, and it will tell the percentage of how clear it is and whether or not it's the registration's off. Is the registration 100 or is the registration 0? And where in between is it? I think that the apps in the future are going to be tied to databases that can tell different characteristics about cards that have already been encapsulated. I don't think there's going to be this mass cracking and switching to a different company. I think it's all the PSA cards. What's the color saturation? You can look it up here. What's the centering? You could look it up here. If you're writing down notes on these ideas for your app that you're developing, please hire me. Please save me. If I could work from home from California, where I am now, I'd love to work for you. I'm very open to a new line of employment. Okay, so that's what I think. I think that the specificity of characteristics of cards is going to start being captured and recorded, and we can look the cards up based on the serial and reference numbers in that particular slab. So this slab with this serial number has these characteristics, which will then in turn make it either a stronger 8 or a lesser 8 based on those characteristics, which I think AI app and software will be able to determine from, like, say, a phone. But it's quite possible that everything I just said is complete horse crap, and none of that will ever happen. That's equally possible, but that's my prediction. My prediction is there's going to be more information available about different characteristics on cards that will be stored potentially at a third party. Because we say, why wouldn't PSA do it? I don't think PSA is probably going to do that, because then it might prove how some of PSA's grading standards changed. If the 6s from these years have the registration way off, the centering way off, the color saturation way off, and then the ones from these years, it would make them, it would be like a report card for how they graded, and it could not work. So I think it would probably be an outside company. But again, who knows? This last one of the week says, great video. Thanks so much for building such a great community for us. Question: I occasionally buy raw cards on eBay. I have noticed that sometimes they arrive with creases that weren't disclosed and not visible on the pictures. Do you think the seller should disclose it on the listing? I avoid giving negative feedback, but sometimes it just feels wrong not to make other buyers aware of certain sellers. I always give the seller a chance to redeem themselves first. Of course. Your thoughts? I think this question is exactly the reason why, I think it's exactly the reason why it is important for us to not discount grading. But Greg, you've just spent an hour talking about why grading's bad. I didn't, though. But I didn't. There in anything, there are pros and there are cons. There are definitely cons and issues with grading. There is human error. There are things that happen. There are mistakes that are made. There are improvements that will be made. But when you grade a card and you encapsulate it, it does provide us with additional information. If you have a card in a PSA 7 and it shows up, it's not going to show up with a crease. And if it does, I think you could contact PSA, and that's where the PSA guarantee comes in. This is exactly, this situation is exactly why I almost never buy ungraded cards online without, if it has a substantial amount of value. $5, $10 card, whatever. But I'm not going to buy a $700 card that's ungraded online. I'm just not doing it. And this is the exact reason why. Should the seller do it? Yes, of course they should. When I go to sell my house, I have to disclose all the different things that I'm aware of that are issues with it. Not only is it a law with your house, but you could be sued about it. But I would do it anyway because I have integrity. And what are you if you don't have integrity? If you don't have integrity, what do you have? And so I tend to share problems with things. I tend to make things worse. Like if I'm selling a raw card, which I rarely do, and I think that it's like near mint, I'm going to put like X mint. Because if anything, I want them to be pleasantly surprised. Do I actually do that? Yeah. I sold a book on eBay about 2 weeks ago. The lady got it and she goes, hey, it seemed like the book was in better condition. It was like a $13 book. And she goes, I thought it was in better condition. The spine is kind of loose. Can you give me a discount? And I'm like, here, you just have all $13 back. Book is a gift from me. Like, it's not that big of a deal to just do the right thing. But this is why I think that it's important. Now, when you get to a certain dollar amount, at a certain threshold, eBay does have the authenticity guarantee where it checks to make sure the card is real. but it also checks to make sure that it meets the condition that is listed. So don't, if you are going to buy a card that is raw, it is ungraded, make sure that a condition is selected. I think it forces you to, doesn't it? Like near mint or better, X mint, good or poor or something. It makes you check one of those boxes, I think. And when it goes to authenticity guarantee, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but my understanding is it's not just being checked to make sure that it's not altered and that it's real, but it's also being checked, does it fall within that range of what a card is supposed to condition-wise be? So I think that what you're asking are cards that must fall below that threshold of the authenticity guarantee, in which case they're not crazy expensive cards, but should they disclose them? Yes. But you could also email them or message them, I guess it is, and say, hey, interested in this card, thinking about buying it, can you just confirm there are no creases or wrinkles? Then they say, nope, there are no creases or wrinkles. That's probably going to eliminate some of it. And then if it shows up and it has creases or wrinkles, then you could go to the eBay buyer protection and say, hey guys, the seller said it didn't have creases or wrinkles, but here's a picture of a crease or a wrinkle, and then they're going to give you your money back. So there are some things I think you could do. Expensive cards should go through the authenticity guarantee, which should catch those things. Make sure that the grade that they have selected is what you're expecting. If it says that it's poor, but it looks like it's mint, it's probably poor. If it is a lesser expensive card, at least the risk is less, but just reach out and ask, because at least then you have in writing proof that they said it did or didn't have certain condition issues, and then the eBay protection could come into play. But at the end of the day, if you're spending an amount of money that would be disappointing to lose, that's kind of why I tend to buy graded stuff. I appreciate all the questions from everyone this week. I got a little off the beaten path a couple of times, but I guess that's what I do. And by now you guys are probably used to it. If you have a question for an upcoming episode, ask it in the comments below. Appreciate you all. Appreciate everyone that showed up Monday night. At least one video again later this week. There will be at least one posted Friday, possibly Friday and Saturday. Look for those. Thanks for watching.